I was hired to get this guitar back into the United States. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. It was a made-to-measure custom order for the shop named Ishibashi. Now, if you're not familiar with them, they are essentially the Japanese equivalent to like our Guitar Center as far as like how many stores they have across their country. So it's not a little small mom and pop shop. Basically, this is a 68 style SG as far as the old Batwing pickguard. We've got 3 pickups in here. The white guard really contrasts against everything else. It was very lightly aged, so we'll kind of see that a little bit more on the workbench as far as how cool that white pickguard is. But this is a very uniquely spec'd out Les Paul Custom. That's right, even though it has 68 specs, I guess they're going for the earlier 60s variation, and we're still calling the SG the Les Paul. So that makes this thing interesting. We actually have the late 60s style nylon saddles here. It's got a really chunky neck. Oh my goodness, if you hate SGs because they usually have thin necks, don't have to worry about that on this. But let's check out what kind of case can do we have. So we have basically a fake COA that the Ishibashi shop made for it. It's got a signature by whoever packed it or something like that, but it's got its serial number and tells you all about what this model is. A custom 3 pickup long Maestro Vibrola. I would assume this is some sort of a receipt. The Gibson pre-pack checklist, which shows you when they had completed it at the factory. We can see the official model is actually a 63 SG. Okay. Looks like regular hang tags for a historic style guitar of this nature. That also says the same thing. A couple of hang tags. But check out the sweet owner's manual. It just tells you how to string up the guitar, general maintenance and care. A giant Gibson pick so you can strum this thing professionally. Case key silica packet. I don't know about you guys, but this thing is sweet looking. You don't find a black SG custom too often, and this one puts it to the 10s. So let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench, take a look at its parts and specs, and see how badly it stays in tune. Alright, inside this freak of an SG. Unfortunately, I can't show you the bottom side of the pickguard. The bridge pickup lead is too short, so I can only get it to go this far. So we can see things like a really clean tenon, and then that does extend into the cavity for a formal long neck. You'll just have to take my words on these photos that I took. But this is not a big swimming pool route. You can't just put whatever you want in here. It actually does have strips of wood in between each of these. As far as the pickups, they're reportedly the Custom Bucker Alnico 3. All 3 of them are that. The pickups have the patent applied for decal on them. Here's some photos you can check out. This one has 2 bridge pickup versions. I get asked that all the time. What is the proper way to lay out a 3 pickup Les Paul or SG? Traditionally, it's neck bridge, but some guys do bridge neck. So our bridge pickup is reading 7.67, 7.79 for the neck, 3.9 in the middle. That sounds about right. So the way Gibson traditionally does 3 pickup guitars, it's neck, bridge in middle, in kind of a slightly out of phase tone. It gives you real single coil like tones. It's not exactly that, but if you just don't like Fender guitars and you want a kind of a single coil tone in your collection, I suggest getting a 3 pickup Gibson wired traditionally. But now the bridge is a little bit special. I already told you about the nylon saddles, and of course it says Gibson ABR1 on the back. However, I want to talk about the thumb wheels. They're actually thicker than usual. They're slightly domed up on the top side. Maybe it's something I just never noticed before. Or maybe it's a historic spec that I just don't know a lot about. Now the long trem, or the Gibson Maestro Vibrola. It's got a lyre on it right there, kind of a small harp thing. They etch it with Gibson. Basically, the way these things work is they have 4 screws on either side. You can take them off, and then that just reveals the base underneath it. And what you'll find are 2 screws that actually secures this vintage-style Vibrola to it. So everything down here is just for cosmetics. It looks cool, and that's why people still want these on their SGs, despite not being the best for tuning stability. But the ball ends of the strings go in here, and then you just wiggle that around and have a lot of fun. So if you lube all that up, make sure your nut is cut properly, and have your strings wrapped properly on your tuning pegs, you should have relative tuning stability. As far as the contours of the body, they're nice and sculpted, nice and pointy. But here's what I was telling you earlier, the aged pickguard edges. You can see how it's been nice and yellowed. Now, it would have been cooler if the white could have got a little bit more of a yellow effect to it, but I do appreciate the fact that they did it to the side, because that really transforms this from looking like a, modern day SG into, maybe it's supposed to be some sort of like a historic reissue. And while the pickguard has a little bit of aging to it, the rest is just VOS, so it's not like finish checking aging going on here. So VOS means things like they will slightly dull the gold hardware like you're seeing right here. Vibrola has a little bit of that to it as well. However, as far as the body goes, it was a pretty mild VOS job. But you'll notice it's labeled volume, volume, tone, tone. So that means they didn't affect any of the wiring, which is really strange coming from a custom order. I thought for sure maybe they would consider doing 3 volumes in a tone, which is common to do. But now to match our beautiful ebony finish, we've got a straight up ebony fretboard. You've got the mother of pearl blocks. They use some pretty nice materials. But you've got 22 frets here. Looks like they're 0.06 tall. A nut width of 1.67. That increases to 2.06 by the 12th. And wow, that is a chunker, 0.95 at the first fret. And a boisterous 1.04 by the 12th. According to the official specs, it is an authentic 64 medium C shape, despite the COA saying 63 SG. I mean, this thing is just all kinds of specs. And here's that neck at the first fret and the 12th fret. I mean, you can just see how narrow and rounded it is at the first fret, and then it kind of chunks up a little bit to get you more of a regular C shape, but I mean, it's a really full feeling neck, which is refreshing on an SG. And we got that beautiful Gibson logo here with our Clusen waffle back tuners. We'll see more of those on the back. But our truss rod cover is that cool historic style one that reads Les Paul. Our truss rod is looking perfect. That's kind of interesting here, seeing as this was kind of like new old stock. I mean, it sat in the store for a good couple of years. You can see a line forming right here. Now that's not a crack or anything that happened in shipping. That's just where the nut actually ends. You'll see that on both sides. That's pretty common to happen after a couple of years. But I was kind of surprised to see this. You see this little pinkish hue right here? That's stand rash. So that tells me this was hanging up in a store. That's not too bad. Most people probably wouldn't even notice that, but it caught my attention just because I was looking for it. The backside. We'll take a look at our electronics first. Seems to be Gibson's regular stuff. Gibson branded pots, all relatively neatly wired in there. But what's really cool is the backplate matches the pickguard. It's white. You don't normally see that, but it just has a good contrast here. The routing job seems to be pretty clean as well, but you can see through straight to the mahogany body. But historic SGs are always kind of cool. I mean, sure, you get slightly more beveled edges to make them a little bit more evil. But did you know that their bodies actually extend onto their necks? I remember the first time I ran into this was on the SG Elegant series, and I thought it was like some sort of a weird repair. All this back here also has a very light VOS job to it. I'm curious if the shop custom ordered it as light VOS or if they just naturally polished it off. I could see Japanese shops doing that and just wanting the very, very mild job. Here we can see those awesome Clusen waffle back tuners. Probably the coolest tuner to ever exist. However, as far as functionality goes, the vintage ones are terrible, but it's probably just because they didn't age well. But the modern reissue ones usually function pretty good, and the serial number is stamped on the back of the headstock. All said and done, this beast is 7 pounds, 11.9 ounces. Let's go ahead and plug this one in and hear how it sounds. And that right there is why I love 3 pickup Gibsons wired traditionally. It's such an interesting tone. Let's go ahead and give some dirt a try. test out the whammy bar here. What are my final thoughts on this thing? Fantastic looking SG / Les Paul custom thing here. This is a very sweet ride. It's got those Tuxedo vibes. If you want this, but on a slight budget, check out the Celebrity Series guitars. They're from 1991-ish, you know, plus or minus a year, depending on a few factors, but they have that whole black and white vibe. Now, they're kind of expensive, about half the price of this guy, if you can find a really clean one. It's not going to be as fancy as this sweet Les Paul custom, but it's a good alternative. But as far as an SG that balances well and looks awesome doing it, fantastic. However, I wasn't a big fan of playing this one, but if I messed with the pickup heights, I'm sure I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But this is how it came stock. So if you have a guitar in Japan that you might need some assistance on, sometimes I can help, not all the time, because my friend is occasionally busy, but this one just happened to work out because it was at a local store near him. Alright, Troglodytes, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.